It's a blistering afternoon in Memphis, the kind that pushes the very air to feel thick, heavy, almost unbearable. The black Cadillac crawls through the oppressive heat of downtown, with Elvis Presley at the helm, sweat trickling down his neck. He has just left an exasperating meeting with RCA executives, who continue to press him to cater to an audience far younger than the one who fell in love with his voice decades ago. At 39, Elvis feels more like a relic than a star, a figure caught between the nostalgic pull of his early rock and roll days and the suffocating demands of an ever-changing music industry. The world he once ruled seems to be slipping through his fingers, and it's not just his career that feels at risk. His very soul seems to be caught in the crossfire of fame, pressure, and self-doubt. Yet, amid this moment of personal and professional disarray, something unexpected happens. As the Cadillac slows near Beale Street, a sound pierces through the usual city clamor, a simple, raw strum of an acoustic guitar, followed by a voice brimming with emotion. It's a song so powerful, so deeply authentic, that it cuts through the noise of traffic and construction as though reaching right into Elvis's heart. In that moment, Elvis's exhaustion fades. His mind, weary from years of industry pressures, suddenly comes alive with a sense of urgency. He orders his driver to pull over, not knowing exactly why, only that something about this music calls to him. The source of the song isn't a famous recording artist or polished studio production. It's a young street performer, singing in a way that Elvis hasn't heard in years, with an honesty that feels both unfamiliar and comforting. He knows immediately this is why he fell in love with music all those years ago. The intersection of Beale and Main holds more than just the usual city bustle today. It holds a revelation. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was a man of contradictions, his stage presence electrifying and untouchable, yet his private life steeped in uncertainty. Fame had brought him untold riches and legions of adoring fans, but it had also placed him in a golden cage. The man who once exuded raw, rebellious energy now found himself bound by contracts, deadlines, and a relentless pursuit of commercial success. The artistic freedom that had fueled his earliest recordings, those revolutionary songs that forever changed music, was being overshadowed by the demands of an industry obsessed with numbers, demographics, and the next big hit. Behind the glitz and glamour, Elvis was weary. He often found himself asking, what happened to the music? The soul-deep expression he'd once found in each note now seemed like a distant memory, something that had faded with the years. Each day felt like an obligation, the spotlight no longer a source of joy, but a relentless reminder of how far removed he had become from the raw, vulnerable artist he once was. The man who had sung with the pain of the world in his voice now struggled to find meaning in his art. As the Cadillac continued its slow crawl, Elvis couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He longed for the authenticity that had drawn him to music in the first place. Songs that spoke of real pain, real joy, and everything in between. He craved a return to the kind of music that wasn't manufactured or calculated, but born from the depths of the soul. Then, from the bustling street, he heard it. A voice, clear and powerful, rose above the urban din like a beacon in the distance. It was a young man, no more than 18, standing alone on a corner with nothing but his guitar and an open case for tips. The crowd around him was small, perhaps a dozen people, all drawn in by the sound of his voice, a voice that spoke not of fame or fortune, but of something deeper. Elvis's heart began to race as he listened intently. The young performer was singing a bluesy version of Amazing Grace. But this wasn't the polished spiritual rendition that one might hear in a church. This was something different. The boy's guitar playing was rough around the edges, but it had a raw power to it, an unrefined authenticity that spoke of struggle, resilience, and a deep understanding of life's complexities. The pain and hope in his voice resonated with Elvis in a way that no chart-topping single ever could. This was music from the heart, not the studio. The boy's performance wasn't just a song, it was an emotional release, a way to express the depths of his soul. It was music that wasn't born for the masses, but for the artist himself. And in that moment, Elvis recognized something that he hadn't felt in years, a deep, aching connection to music. The young man's music had an undeniable pull, and Elvis, almost instinctively, moved closer to the crowd. Each step he took was deliberate, as if he were being drawn towards something much bigger than a simple street performance. The sounds of the bustling city faded into the background as his focus narrowed entirely on the boy with the guitar. It was a song that cut through the very air, unraveling the complexities of the human experience with every note. Elvis had seen many musicians, some famous, some unknown, but none had struck him like this. He could hear the imperfections in the boy's voice, the rough edges in his guitar playing, yet there was a purity in it that was so rare in the world of commercial music. The boy wasn't performing for the applause, nor for fame. He wasn't even performing for money. He was playing because he had to, because it was the only way he knew how to express the struggles of his soul. As Elvis neared the performer, he noticed details that painted a picture of the boy's life, details that resonated with his own past. The guitar case was littered with stickers from different cities, marking the boy's travels across the South, but the case was nearly empty. It was clear that this boy had been playing for the love of music, not for the hope of wealth. His clothes, though clean, were worn and faded. They had the unmistakable look of someone who had seen hardship, someone who had learned to make do with less. There was something deeply familiar in the boy's music, in his passion, and in his unspoken connection to his instrument. It reminded Elvis of his own youth, those early days of picking up a guitar long before the world recognized his name, those days when his voice was all he had to give, when he sang not for the world but for himself, for the raw emotion that music brought out of him. But now he felt lost. The demands of fame, the expectations of the music industry had taken that away from him. His music had become a business, and he had become a product. As the young man finished his haunting rendition of Amazing Grace, the crowd applauded, but Elvis didn't move. He remained frozen in place, his gaze fixed on the boy. There was something about him, something real, that had struck a chord deep inside of him. Elvis watched as the boy opened his eyes, catching sight of him for the first time. The recognition was instant. The boy's face betrayed his surprise and disbelief. "Sir," he said, his voice laced with uncertainty and awe, "I'll sit you Elvis Presley." Elvis nodded, stepping forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "I am, son, and you set one hell of a musician. What sets your name?" "My name is David Collins, Mr. Presley," the young man replied, shaking Elvis's hand. His voice trembled with nervous excitement, as if he couldn't quite believe that one of the most famous men in the world was standing before him. David's reaction, though filled with excitement, wasn't one of worship. It was one of respect, of mutual recognition. The boy wasn't awed by Elvis's fame. Instead, he was moved by the authenticity of his music, just as Elvis had been moved by David's. It was a moment of connection, two musicians from vastly different worlds, meeting at the intersection of their shared passion for real, raw music. As Elvis looked at David, he saw not just a young man struggling to make a name for himself, but an artist, someone whose music wasn't tainted by industry expectations or the pressure of selling records. David played because it was the only way he knew how to survive emotionally, the only way to make sense of the chaos of his life. And in that moment, Elvis realized something profound. Music wasn't just a career, it was an expression of the human spirit. The conversation between Elvis and David was quiet at first, both men sizing each other up in a moment of shared silence. But as the minutes passed, the weight of their encounter began to settle in. Elvis, deeply moved by David's authenticity, began to reflect on the direction his life had taken. The boy's words, simple yet profound, echoed in his mind. David spoke of music not as a commodity, not as something to be shaped to fit the mold of the industry, but as a raw necessity, a form of expression so essential to his being that it transcended any external validation. David's humility was evident. He didn't see his music as a means to an end. He wasn't looking for fame or fortune. He wasn't playing for an audience or for record sales. He played for himself, for the joy and release that music gave him. He spoke of how music had always made sense of the world for him, even when nothing else did. The fact that he had found meaning in music, despite his circumstances, stirred something deep within Elvis. "You don't know how much that means to me," Elvis said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've been in this business for over 20 years. I've worked with some of the greatest musicians in the world. But what you just did, that's something else. That's real. That's the kind of music that moves the soul." David's face lit up, a rare joy crossing his features. "Music is the only thing that's ever made sense to me," he said, almost as if admitting a truth he had known all along, but had never shared with anyone else. "It's the only way I can express what I'm feeling. I never learned to play for money. I play to feel something." Elvis listened carefully, letting David's words wash over him. This wasn't just about music anymore. It was about life, about human connection, and about something deeper than industry success or artistic acclaim. David's music came from a place that Elvis had almost forgotten, the place of raw emotion, of personal struggle, and of the relentless pursuit of truth. Elvis realized that in all his years of being a star, he had slowly lost touch with that. Music had become something he did, something he had to do. But David reminded him that music could also be something you lived and breathed, something you could never separate from your soul. For a moment, Elvis stood still, considering everything David had said. He thought of his own struggles, his isolation, his battles with fame, and his fear that he had somehow betrayed the very essence of what he once believed in. "David," Elvis began, his voice thick with emotion, "you've reminded me of something important. You've reminded me why I started making music in the first place. You've shown me what it means to make music, because it's part of who you are, not because of what anyone else wants." David Sir's eyes widened, as though he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Mr. Presley, you once have been my hero since I was a kid. Your music taught me that it was possible to be true to yourself, to reach people while staying real. I tried to do the same." In that moment, Elvis made a decision that would change both of their lives in ways they never could have imagined. He extended an offer to David, one that would transform him from a homeless street musician to a recognized artist. "David, I want you to come with me. I want to hear more of your music. I want to understand what you're trying to do with your art. Let's talk. Let's make something real together." The decision to invite David back to Graceland marked the beginning of something far greater than a simple gesture of kindness. For David, it felt like a dream, an impossible dream that had suddenly come true. The boy who had once played for spare change on the streets of Memphis was now being invited into the home of one of the most iconic figures in music history. But for Elvis, this moment wasn't just about helping someone in need. It was about rediscovering himself, reconnecting with the very essence of why he had started making music all those years ago. As the days passed, Elvis and David worked together in the comfort of Graceland's private studio. There was no rush, no pressure from the outside world. For the first time in years, Elvis felt the freedom to experiment, to explore the music that stirred his soul without concern for radio play or record sales. They recorded songs that were raw, deeply emotional, and, most importantly, honest. It was a process that reignited something within Elvis, a passion that had been buried under years of expectations and commercial demands. He could feel the music coming back to life within him, filling the empty spaces that had long been overshadowed by the constraints of the industry. But what Elvis didn't expect was how much he would learn from David. The young musician, despite his humble beginnings, had a wisdom that belied his years. His approach to music, his view of it as an essential spiritual force, was something that Elvis had never fully considered. David didn't play for fame or for fortune. He played because it was his calling. He saw music as a way to connect with the deepest parts of the human experience, to heal and to inspire others. It was this perspective that challenged Elvis to rethink his own relationship with his art. "David," Elvis said one evening after a particularly emotional jam session, "you Sepp reminded me of something I Sepp'd almost forgotten. Music isn't Sepp just about the applause. It's Sepp's about touching hearts. It's Sepp's about making a difference in people's Sepp's lives." David smiled, his eyes bright with the knowledge that he had found a kindred spirit in Elvis. "Mr. Presley, you Sip been my hero. I always thought I Sip'd never have the chance to show you what music means to me. But now, I see that you get it. You see the real reason we do this." Their time together at Graceland wasn't just about music. It was about two men from different walks of life, finding a common ground. The collaboration that emerged between them was more than just a professional relationship. It was a mentorship. Elvis offered to help David record a demo, and he used his resources to ensure that David's talent would be heard by the right people in the industry. But more than that, he offered David something invaluable: his wisdom. He taught him about the business side of music, about the importance of staying true to oneself, and about how to balance artistic integrity with the demands of the industry. For David, the experience was life-changing. The sense of validation that came from working with Elvis, from having his music heard and appreciated by one of the greatest performers of all time, gave him a newfound sense of confidence. The boy who had once played for scraps was now on the path to something bigger, something he had never dared to dream about. Elvis helped David secure a recording contract, but more than that, he helped him find his voice, his purpose, and his place in the world of music. As the collaboration grew, it became clear that this partnership was about more than just music. It was about legacy. It was about the responsibility that artists had to stay true to their craft and to lift others up along the way. Elvis realized that his influence wasn't just about fame. It was about using his platform to help others find their own voice, just as he had once found his. The journey that began on a hot Memphis afternoon, with a simple street performance by David Collins, had become something far greater than either man could have imagined. For Elvis, the encounter with David was more than a meeting of two musicians. It was a rediscovery of what it meant to be an artist. It reminded him that true music comes from a place of honesty, of vulnerability, and of deep, unspoken connection. It was never meant to be a commodity to be sold, but a form of expression that connected people across the boundaries of time, space, and circumstance. For David, the opportunity to work with Elvis didn't just change his life, it gave him a platform to speak his truth, to share his music with the world, and to prove that even in the face of hardship, passion and dedication could overcome all obstacles. His story became a testament to the power of staying true to oneself, to never compromising one's vision, no matter the external pressures. And through it all, Elvis became more than just a mentor. He became a reminder of the healing power of music, of how it can connect souls, lift spirits, and inspire greatness in others. As the two men forged a bond through music, their collaboration symbolized something far beyond their individual careers. It represented the timeless truth that greatness in art isn't found in numbers, fame, or industry recognition. It's found in the ability to touch the hearts of others with genuine emotion. And it's this connection, this empathy, that makes music and life meaningful. This story, a story of talent discovered in the most unexpected place, reminds us that greatness isn't always found in the places we expect. Sometimes it's in the raw, unpolished moments of life that we find the deepest truths. Now I invite you to reflect. Have you ever had a moment when something or someone changed your perspective on life? How has music or art helped you heal and connect with the world? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation about the profound impact of authentic expression. If you were moved by the story of David Collins and Elvis Presley, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this story with someone who needs to hear about the healing power of music and human connection. Together, let's keep celebrating the magic that happens when real talent meets genuine recognition.